So yes, if you're thinking, oh, I don't want to do what I've been doing before. I want a fresh start. I want to take COVID as an opportunity to do something completely different. Then you can, and you should really, if you don't want to carry on doing what you've done before. Because I have this saying: if you're not happy with what you're doing, and you always do the same, you will always get the same result. So this might be an opportunity for you to change, to make a job change. And that doesn't mean to say that you're like a school leaver with no experience and no qualifications and no skills. You have plenty of skills, but it's about teasing out what skills they want in the new job that you're applying for from the skills that you've used before. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, really. Okay, so let's start. Let's start with the communication skills. Okay, so if you're applying for, you've been in an office job, okay, and now you've decided you want a complete change and you want to work with people. Are you going to be using the same communication skills? The job, if you're applying for a job, say as a personal assistant, caring for somebody in a care home, and you previously worked in an office, you don't need to talk about the skills that you gained doing the accounts. You don't need to talk about communicating with the managing director, but you will have picked up a lot of skills communicating with people face to face, and you need to bring that out, outline that. So it might be that you say, even though I worked in an office, this was a big office, I had to take responsibility, I had to welcome new people. So you're really emphasizing your communication skills. That's not to say that because you're working in a care place that you're not going to be not using any technology or any of the things that you might have used in the office. So it might be that you're helping somebody use a computer, and it might be that in the office you had the responsibility of training somebody. So you can use that experience in your new application. So some examples of communicating ideas and feelings around what's happened to you. Communication involves listening, speaking, observing and empathizing. Having strong communication skills is important in every job. And that's what an employer will be looking towards, that you will be able to communicate with whoever their customers are, whether that's a client or I do believe they're called service users, but they're still customers. So you would highlight things like active listening, because it's very important, isn't it, if you're going to be caring for someone, that the first thing you do is listen to them, actively listen. So if you could give an example of that, where you've done that before in your career. Could anybody do that? Could anybody give me an example of where in any of the jobs that you've done, you've had to use active listening?
Yeah, I can give an example. I was a content writer earlier, and for being a content writer, I had to do the cross-functional teams. I had to go and collect information on what they're doing and how they're actually progressing with their work, to get the content out on the website and present it in the white papers or articles. So there it was majorly active listening and noting down a lot of information and make it presentable.
Brilliant, brilliant. So that is a really good example of something that is directly transferable.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a care situation, there might be something that happens, an incident, and you have to record it. So
True.
what you've done there, you've given me an example of your active listening, but you've also included there how recording, that you had to take the information and use it. It doesn't matter where you used it, you know, you took that information and you recorded it. So that's a lovely example of more than what I'm asking for, really.
Oh,
Yeah. So, and when you're in applying for a job and in an interview situation, you want to keep giving all about yourself, you know, because that insight is really good. That tells me, oh, she's done a lot, you know, there was a lot there. So try and avoid one word answers and one word sentences. You went on to explain what the communication was and what it led to. So that was really good and clear.
thank you.
Yeah, so communication skills. Now, it might be that it is a role where you are speaking in front of other people. Can anybody give me an example of that, where they've had to maybe do a presentation?
Training.
Yeah,
Done quite a lot of training, one-to-one and occasionally classroom training.
right.
And that's all about talking.
Yeah,
Both Yvonne and I have worked in airlines on the customer service side. So quite often we have to communicate to large groups of people, putting across problems and solutions for them. So yes, lots of that.
lots of yeah. So, you know, again, you're telling me that you're communicating. You also slipped in problem solving, didn't you?
Yeah.
It's about bringing the, you know, more skill set. Yeah, so if you've done that sort of communicating, yes, you know, get it out there. Okay, so written communication. I mean, there's emails and record keeping. Generally, whatever you're doing, there's going to be a computer you have to record things on. So include that. Okay, so communication skills are one of the big transferable things. So we've covered active listening. What other communication forms are there?
You mentioned writing.
Telephones.
Yeah, sorry, Rashid, you were going to say.
I just said you mentioned writing as well. So obviously report writing and sending emails and letters out is another way of communicating.
Yeah. And social media. That's, you know, that is the way of communicating nowadays, isn't it? Using social media. Sorry, David, you were going to say something then, and I interrupted.
Telephone
Yeah.
communication, which is what we mainly do these days.
Yeah, telephone or text. So
yes, lot of non-face-to-face communications where even without picture you have to listen and communicate feelings, emotions and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And learn to interpret other people.
That's right. Yeah. And a lot of people on the telephone will have a telephone voice, and they will sound quite different when they come off the phone. I have heard people on the phone, and I think, you don't normally sound like that. You don't normally talk like that. And I used to work with a lot of young people, and they were dreadful on the phone. And I think they're probably getting worse because they're texting. You know, so there's a lot of skills that you have that young people do not have. And you need to emphasize that. You know, you've had a lot more experience of communicating your whole life. So, and communicating on the telephone is probably something that you are much better at than a young person. Yeah. What other? So we've got social media, telephone, emails.
We mentioned letter writing as well, because obviously writing letters to customers is something that's important. Obviously, you're representing the company organization, making sure that's in the correct format,
Yeah.
and language is very important.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people, well, some people would think that the art of letter writing is dead now that emails are around, but actually it isn't. I get an email every week from the school, and it says email, see letter attached, and it is a letter. It's a formal letter all set out. So, you know, the art of letter writing is not dead. It's very much alive. It's just sent instead of coming through the post. It can be sent by email.
I've noticed over time that I'm not sure that the art of letter writing is still good. It still happens. Letters are created, but whether people still know how to write a letter properly is a different matter altogether.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like if you start, dear sir, do you do it yours faithfully or yours sincerely? Yeah, I think that is maybe evolving over time. What was I going to say next? And I think one of the skills that you probably have that you haven't mentioned is communicating with a wide range of people. So that could be from little children, communicating with babies, right through to old people, people with disabilities. So I think you should always emphasize that you know who you've been communicating with in the past. You know, if you've been working in a play group, communicating through play, using educational materials to communicate with young people, with children. If it's a role that you're going into where it's hands-on, communicating with people, emphasize that you can communicate with the customers that you're relating to. So it might be that you're applying for a job in a bar where you need good customer service communication skills. So that's the ones that you would emphasize. If you're applying for a job in a care home with an old person, you would be emphasizing your patience, how you patiently communicate, which would be very different from the working in the bar and the restaurant, wouldn't it? Where you communicate quickly, smoothly, slickly. So we've done quite a lot on communication, but it's probably the most important one, isn't it? It doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're an accountant, you have to communicate with your clients, or whether you're working in a shop, communicating with the customers. So, what other skills do you think there are?
Planning skills.
Yeah. So planning.
Time management and planning is probably a key one.
Yeah. So you might be going into a role where you have to demonstrate that you can do many things at the same time and that you can plan ahead. If you are a methodical person who can only do things like one after the other, and it's a role that is calling for you to be flexible, to be able to drop one thing and move on to another, it might not be the role for you. But planning, yeah, I think it's important that you show that you are able to plan. Can somebody give me an example of something that they had to plan in a career that they've had? David.
I was an aircraft dispatcher, so every time that you went out to an aeroplane, you had to plan in advance exactly what was going on, the customers that you were going to deal with, how you were going to deal with the loading of the aeroplanes. So it was all about planning and then execution,
Right.
and then dealing with problems as they arose. So you had to be flexible. Once you had a basic outline plan, everything else was depending on the situation as it arose. So you had to be both able to plan and be flexible in moving those plans.
Yeah. Okay. So again, you slipped in a few other skills there. So planning, execution, flexible. Yeah. It's a key part of a lot of roles, isn't it, really?
Yes.
If you're going to be caring for someone, maybe you're going to do one-to-one caring, you're going to visit them in the morning, but it might be that you have to plan the day ahead with them. You have to consider the weather. You have to consider what they want to do. Maybe it's somebody in a wheelchair, you might have to consider wheelchair access. So it is all about gathering all the information and everything and planning what's going to be happening. So there is ways that you could transfer what you said, David, into a career that is completely different, where you're planning with an individual rather than planning with goods. Yeah. The thought process and the care that behind it, and being flexible, and executing it at the end is similar. You can compare and contrast them. Yeah.
Yep.
So we've led from planning. Okay. Does anyone have any particular job description that they would like to use that we could go through? I do have one. I will attempt to screen share here. Okay, can you bear with me? If I put that up. I'm going to screen share. Have I done it? Can you see?
Yes. Yep, got it.
Yep. You see, I could, if I was applying for a job, I could now put this in, but I've used Zoom and I've actually screen shared. So this is a real job. I went on, I didn't know who my audience was going to be. Otherwise, I might have been able to be specific about which role we were going to apply for. So this is a real job. This is for a learning support assistant. And it's in a Buckinghamshire primary pupil referral unit. I think I might have had you in mind, Asma. Is Asma there? Or have we lost her? Where's Asma? Asma.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh yeah. So I think I might have had you in mind when I looked at this this role.
Right.
But we'll go through it. And what we're really looking at is the skills, because that's what this is all about, is the transferable skills. So you will see on most job descriptions and person specifications that some things are essential and some things are desirable. So really, if you cannot answer the essential things, you might as well not apply for the job, because when they're sifting through the applications, that is what they will be looking for. Desirable, you might not have to meet all of them. It is desirable that you do, but desirable are usually things that you can do training for. So an enthusiastic, optimistic, can-do outlook and a good sense of humour. Okay, now this is working in a pupil referral unit, which is for children who are not in school, So it is quite stressful, and that is why you need a good sense of humor, you know, and that might be something that you need in many stressful jobs. Let me think. If you're going to be a traffic warden, you might need at the end of the day a good sense of humor, because you would have taken a lot of insults. So, an enthusiastic, optimistic, can-do outlook and a good sense of humor. Could somebody please give me an example of where that was needed in a role that they've done?
If you,
You, Yvonne.
Sorry, sorry, I didn't hear you, Diane, sorry.
I said, could one of you give me an example of when you have had to show that you can be enthusiastic, have a can-do outlook and a good sense of humor?
Again, I was a supervisor at Heathrow, and you know, when there was really stressful situations when we had to deal with delays and things like that, and you just had to be calm and be patient. And as a team leader, it was up to me to try to keep everybody optimistic and enthused, because you know we're going to be dealing with a lot of stressed out passengers coming towards us soon, and trying to keep everybody upbeat and sort of, you know, that we can do it, we can get through it. We'll make sure everybody gets what they need, and yeah, support everybody around me. So yeah.
Okay, I mean, you're really good, you lot. This is so different to working with young people who sit there and you have such a wealth of experience. And that is it's a great example, isn't it, of where you were under stress and you know you had to keep everybody together. You did nothing. You talked about being calm and patient and upbeat and can do. So that was really good. That's the sort of thing that you could put in an application like this. And most people have travelled through to an airport, if not Heathrow, but people will know who've been to Heathrow. It's a big place, you know, so they will immediately be able to identify with what you've said, you know, and anybody who's had a plane delay of a plane, they know how stressful that can be, you know. So to say that you're the person who had to try and keep it all together, it's brilliant. That is definitely demonstrating a can-do attitude, isn't it?
They don't know the stress that really gets involved, do they, Yvonne?
No.
The passengers have the easy part. They don't know it.
Yeah.
I know, it's like they say, you know, like you're like a swan, you're very calm on top, but your legs are racing underneath the water, you know, that kind of analogy.
And the situation changes from second to second, never mind minute to minute.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I mean that's so good, because if you were applying for this job, you know, and you have to hold it together, you're working with young children, you cannot let them see that underneath you are panicking. So that one analogy is perfect, because you have to hold it together for the child. No matter what they're demonstrating, you cannot let them see that you're angry, scared, hurt, or any of your emotions. You have to be that swan and you have to be calm for them.
Yeah.
So that's a lovely analogy. And why not use it? You know, find yourself in an interview, maybe not in the application form.
Yeah.
Interview.
Yeah.
I would use that one. Okay, we've actually covered a lot on the communication skills, haven't we? Oral and written, and you gave me some examples of those before. And somebody give me some good listening skills. Rashid, you gave me an example of a listening skills, did you?
Well, a good listening skill is as when I was working as a complaint caseworker or case handler. So you're listening. You have to listen to the customer's complaint, understand why they're aggrieved, and otherwise, when you respond to them, you might miss something. So it's very important as part of your customer service skills that you're able to listen to a customer. Sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's just frustration. It's just being able to keep calm and taking every word and work out which ones are relevant to the complaint.
Yeah, that's good. You do have to listen. because you know what you think might be upsetting them might be completely different. You know, some people really react to other people's mood and personality, don't they? You know, you can have something go dreadfully wrong, but if somebody says, "Oh, I'm really sorry," you know, it's the way they've been handled.
Yeah,
Yeah.
having a calming nature and sort of sympathetic nature when you're listening to somebody, it can help sort of help sort of resolve the issue without getting it, making it get worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's so good, isn't it? So without making things even worse than they actually are. Yeah.
I mean, from my experience at the airport, again, you know, because you're dealing with people from, you know, you're interacting with people from all over the world, and sometimes obviously English is not their first language, and they may be stressed again with delays or other things, and you need to be able to communicate with them. But so you're listening very carefully, because as I said, if the language is limited, your listening skills definitely have to be at their optimum at that stage.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about listening, isn't it? And it's about observing their body language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your body language as well, because you can communicate an awful lot. Again, from our joint experience at the airport, a lot of what we used to use for keeping people calm and under control was our own demeanor and our own body language to give out an air of confidence, even though we didn't very often feel as if we were in control of the situation.
Yeah.
It was very much a case of making them believe that you knew what you were doing, even if it was all fly by the seat of your pants stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Now there's something that I'm doing, and there's something that you're all doing there, and it's nodding. It's doing this, which lets the person who is talking, explaining, it just lets them know that you're listening, that you are actually taking in what they're saying. I mean, shit, you probably didn't have that when you were on the other end of the phone, did you?
No, you didn't. But you had to sort of just reassure them that you've taken on what they've said by repeating it back to them, that just to understand this is what you're complaining. So you're basically just sort of imaging what they're saying, so they know that you've listened and you've written down exactly what they're complaining about. So, and that was important because obviously as part of that job that was a skill that you had to be very good at, to be able to make sure you haven't missed any of their complaint points. So all it does is escalate the way they feel that you've missed something.
Absolutely. It's learning just to summarize what they've said so that they know you've taken it all in. You can't repeat everything that they've said, but you just summarize the key points so that they know. Yeah. Okay. Ability to work independently, taking responsibility for the organization of a personal caseload. Okay, so I should imagine that this is working in a school. You will, and it's a pupil referral unit. So you will have a small caseload of young people, and you have to look after them, well, monitor them, do report writing about them, but you're going to be their key person. And you're going to be doing that independently. You're not going to have a supervisor saying, oh, today you need to do this, that, and the other. You're going to have to work completely independently. Can anybody give me examples of where they've had to do that, take on responsibility and work independently in a previous career that might transfer into this one?
Well, I worked in event management, so I'd be organising events for customers and clients. So, you know, I would be personally responsible for that event right from the beginning and right through to the very end once the event was completed. So, you know, the client would come directly to me and communicate with me as to what their requirements were and what their needs were.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's demonstrating that you were the person who, at the end of the day, had that responsibility. You weren't getting instructions. Because some people work better if they're given a task and told what to do. You know, so maybe they wouldn't be applying for a job like this. but it is demonstrating that you've taken responsibility and worked independently. I think that is the key thing there, really. And I'm sure you have all worked on your own. So it's drawing out the things from your experience and being able to put the example there. So who else have we got on the call? I think I can only see 4 of you. Would somebody else like to give an example of that who we haven't heard from already?
I can.
Yes.
So I also worked in Heathrow. I wasn't in the operational side of the Heathrow, so I wasn't physically in the airport. But we had a sub-team called the Education and Skills team, where we worked alongside communities, schools, right from primary schools, secondary schools, colleges and unis. And one of those was where we organised a programme to invite children in half term to come have a work experience week with us. This was based in our headquarters in the Compass Centre. So yeah, it was similar to one. It was taking the project from start to end, making sure all the children arrived safely. They had their security passes, so on and so forth. They were designated projects. They were allocated different teams, and just making sure they all were working each day and turning up, and they had all the equipment and so on and so forth. And yeah, just making sure the whole program ran smoothly from start to end for the whole week, to make sure that their needs were met. They were learning. They weren't just photocopying and so on and so forth. They were actually learning about what it's like to work in the airport, and what other roles there were within the airport that made it, work, as well as have fun and be safe at the same time. Make sure safeguarding was in place because they were children. It was the busiest week I had in my time at Heathrow. But yeah, it was sort of making sure there were all those elements that you were working with, all the safeguarding people, but as well as communicating with the children as well, to make sure they were engaged, they felt happy, they felt safe. So there's lots of aspects to it, but yeah, it's sort of left to it, trying to manage 30 children.
So that was a really good example, because it's directly related to working with young people, isn't it? And that's what this particular job that you're applying for is. So it lets them know that you will probably put that somewhere else in your application as well, that you've done that. But there were a lot of key things that you mentioned there that were so good. So you said making sure their needs were met, making sure they were learning, and you said about making it fun and keeping them safe and engaged. So, you demonstrated that you'd had been able to work independently, but you got so much more in that as well. And what you were talking about is directly transferable. It's working with young people in an environment where they're going to learn something, and making sure they've got the equipment and they know what they need and they're on task, but they're safe. I mean, and you did bring into that safety, which is really important when working with any client group, really. So I think you get this job. There's so much you can take from that experience, because in a pupil referral unit, I mean, they do like to get the kids out and about, because these are children who, are not necessarily going to be learning the best sat behind a desk and looking at a board. So they will be having lots of activities where they're taken out, so that's such a good transferable situation, that you've taken the skills and been able to do that. Okay, so ability to work independently, able to organise and prioritise workloads and achieve deadlines. Okay, so achieving deadlines, I mean, it's all very well, organizing things and being creative and doing what you want. But at the end of the day, there's always a deadline, isn't there? When it's got to be done by. And, the deadlines for working in a school are generally governed, they shouldn't be, but they're governed by Ofsted and the inspections. You have to do lots and lots of things that and show that you're doing things, and things have to be done by a timeline. So it is important that you would be able to demonstrate that you would be able to achieve deadlines and that you understand the importance of that. And I can see David smiling. You've got a deadline you would like to, you think that you've had in the past?
Our deadlines are measured in minutes.
Okay.
Because we're working to an on-time departure. So
Cool.
every minute over, I think we were allowed an extra 5 minutes. Anything after that was the equivalent of a demerit.
Right.
So you were working literally to minute deadlines throughout the day. It wasn't just once a day or anything like that. You would be working to these deadlines 5, 6, 7, 8 times during the course of a day.
Which is quite pressurized, isn't it?
It is very pressurized, yes.
Asma, how about you? Can you recall a time in your career, your past work life, where you worked to deadlines?
Yes, I can actually. We used to deal with fresh products like fresh fish, fresh seafood.
Right.
So it has obviously it has an expiry, and it's fresh. So you need to, if you ordered something, you need to make sure that it was all distributed in all the supermarkets. So I've worked with like tons of fish, like two tons that I've ordered. I've taken the responsibility that I will be selling this. So my deadline was, okay, this 2 ton has to be finished within a span of 1 day, basically. As soon as it reaches from the airport, it has to be sent to distributed over.
Yeah. You
So
don't with a load of dead fish, do you?
yeah, and it was like very, obviously then the quality was checked and everything. So that was a deadline for, I worked on deadlines on those lines. And it used to be like weekly, thrice that the shipments used to come.
Yeah.
And then made sure, and before the shipments even arrived, I had to make sure that this had to be, my customers were all ready to take it in.
Yeah.
So you had to space out the warehouse to see where the product is going, because they didn't want to store it. The warehouse didn't want to store it. It was supposed to be from airport directly to the clients.
Yeah.
So you had to do the logistics part of it, make sure all the logistics team know that this will be going directly to wherever I'm selling it.
Yeah.
So yeah, those kind of deadlines.
Yeah. So you used to working to deadlines. I mean, I think with yours, people will be getting a mental image that I was then, you were talking about fish, and straight away I'm thinking, oh my goodness me, if you didn't do what you needed to do, you'd be left with a horrendous smell of fish.
Yeah.
So I think keep it simple, because you've only got the application form to do. So it's a good example, but you don't need to go into, well, you can't go into lots and lots of things. I know you only have done, so you can explain it to me, but yeah, and don't think it's not a transferable skill, because that straight away that says, oh my goodness me, it's really important that she had to do that. So she's used to doing those things. Okay. So good ICT skills. Okay, they're required for this job, and like I said before, they are in lots of jobs. So how would you demonstrate that? What would you say? Would you say what programs you've used?
Yeah, if you say you're familiar with working with different software within the office.
Yeah.
Environment.
name it. Be specific. Be very
So-
specific. So I've used Word, I've used Excel, I've used PowerPoint, I've used, I don't know what all the programs are, but just put the words in.
Right.
That's it. I don't think this one would necessarily be read by a computer, but some applications are read by a computer because they get so many. So they're put into the computer. The computer is picking out keywords, and it might be that the job you're applying for, you know, good ICT skills is quite high up. So you actually put the words in that you've done. So here we are running out of time. Ability to relate to pupils with social, emotional, or mental health difficulties. So that is about letting them know that you have worked with a wide range of other people. So it might be that you've somebody with dementia. I mean, Russia, you must have had all sorts of people on the telephone talking to you about, you know, complaining.
Yes, you had to be, one of the things we had to be trained on is basically understanding customers of vulnerability. They may not openly tell you, but you may pick up somebody that's very elderly. They may not be speaking very clearly, and you just need to be conscious of their situation without making it too obvious that, you know, that's going to be something that you're taking on board. But obviously, some people don't want, they might get upset that, you know, you're treating them differently than they expect to be.
Yeah.
So it's being able to, if you do identify something, it's being able to ask them whether they have your consent to record that as part of what you may feel they're vulnerable for, because obviously that may have an impact on how you deal with that complaint, because if they have some type of disability or some kind of vulnerability, the way they are interacting with the service or product that they're complaining about has an impact on how you deal with them.
Right.
So again, understanding that, and over the telephone, it's not always obvious unless they tell you outright, you know, that they have a disability.
Yeah.
And then there's also, I mean, sometimes it could be an emotional thing where they've had a death in the family, or, you know, the partner's passed away recently or something, and that has an impact on how they behave and how they respond, because they may not be, their priority was obviously the death and not the complaint, and that may have delayed why they complain. That has an impact on how you deal with it, because obviously you have to take that into consideration, that, you know, even though a time frame has passed, you still have to take something like that into consideration, that, you know, if that situation didn't happen, would they have complained sooner? And if that was the case, would that have a different impact on how they were being dealt with?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lovely example of relating to people, isn't it? To relating to the person, to their issues. Yeah. And that's what they're asking there. You know, they want an example of how you've related to somebody with difficulties. Now, we are running out of time. We've only got 3 minutes left. So can I ask if there's any questions arising from that? The skills that we've looked at and transferable skills. Do you think there's anything that we haven't covered?
I wanted to ask you, sorry, one of the things I would like to know more about is how you show transferable IT skills. Like on my previous roles, I've had to learn new IT systems working for the bank. Now, obviously, one organization to another, they may be different systems, but what I believe I've learned is that without knowing that system initially, I've been able to master it and work effectively, is how to show that to an organization I've never worked for, haven't had any experience with, that though I don't know the systems or know what they are using, you know, I do have the ability to learn and learn quickly. I've tried to explain that a few times, but without having that specific skill set, I've kind of missed out on jobs, or I feel like that, you know, they've just not listened to me. Now, I don't know if there's people that are in a stronger position that's possible, that they've had that experience already. So as an employer, you probably go with somebody with that experience that's specific to their organization over somebody that they don't have. But it's hard when you feel like, well, if I've learned something quite complicated, it shows that I should be able to learn something else again.
Yeah, well, I think you just explained that perfectly to me.
I wish you were my interviewee.
But I think in the application stage, that is why it's important to put the names of the programs that you've used so that they can see there's a whole variety of things. So when I was working as a careers advisor, we had a system. It was called IYRS. Another company wouldn't be interested in that. But on an application form, I would put, I used IYRS, and in brackets, I would put young person's record system. And that would immediately tell them that it was a computer database that I'd be recording on. They weren't interested in necessarily the detail of it, or how long it took me to learn it, or how big a database it was, or anything like that. But that told them that I was a young person's record system. So when I go for a job, maybe working in the youth service, they'll know that I know the importance of recording certain things about young people.
Yes.
That's why on your application form, just put lots of the names of the systems that you use. You don't need to go into too much detail because they don't need to know that.
Right. Okay.
But name it, and put exactly what you said to me. That this demonstrates that I am able to learn quickly and pick up things.
Yeah.
Transfer my IT skills from one package to the next.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. Thank
They
you.
know that you won't know their exact system because it's probably at the moment private and confidential, especially if it's a banking one.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, when you're working from one bank to another, they
Yeah.
have slightly different systems, but the fundamentals are the same. It's record keeping, and it's looking at customer details, and it's the importance of how you log things. So, like you said, yeah, it's understanding the reasons why those systems are important and how they function.
So you put that, you say, I understand why those things are important. And just what you've just said to me, but you just say, word it like on the application form.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
One part where your name dropping is good.
absolutely.
Thank you.
And I would also say, I mean, if the systems that you have used and you've trained other people, get that in there. Slip in that you know how to train people on different systems.
Right. Okay.
Because they will have people who maybe are not that good. Well, we used to call them super users.
Yes.
We
Yes.
had somebody who was a super user who they could go to. Have you been a super user?
Yeah, they call it SME, subject matter expert. So they're basically, I've done that role as well. So it's important that, especially for new people coming into the role, if you're quite competent in it, they would maybe ask you to help somebody that's not so strong in it.
That's right. And everybody knows the best way to learn something is to teach someone. You really, learn it well that way.
Yes,
So,
that's right.
Slip that in there. Slip whatever you can in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Let me stop sharing because I can't see you very well. Right. Who taught me how to share?
Could you scroll it down because I'd like to see the bottom of the matrix.
Ah, there we go. Right.
Oh yes, again.
Yeah. I was going to say, and we are running over, I hope that's okay. I was going to talk about the difference between skills and qualities and attitudes. And what I just wanted to say was, don't get hung up about it. Some people will call something a skill, some people will call it a quality or an attitude. Just take the description and use their language. Repeat what they've got on there, you repeat it on your application. All the keywords that they've used. So share expertise, quickly able to work effectively as a team member. Use their language. Don't worry if it's, you're repeating yourself from one section to the other.